12 years ago, my family erased me, no calls, no holidays, just silence. I found out later why. My mother forged a DNA test to cut me out of the will, and my sister stole my thesis and built a career on it. So when their $100,000 wedding invitation showed up, I didn't flinch, I showed up. I walked into that ballroom, looked my mother in the eye, and said, "You forged the test. Sit down." Then I plugged in a USB, and the whole room watched their perfect image collapse under crystal chandeliers. They built a legacy on my silence. But I came back for one thing, the truth. And I didn't whisper it. I made sure it echoed. Hello, I'm Rowena, and my family erased me like I didn't exist 12 years ago. No phone calls. No vacations. Simply gone. They're having a wedding now as if nothing had happened. But what if I told you that my future was stolen by the bride? That I was once humiliated in a boardroom by the groom? And that in order to exclude me from the will, my own mother falsified a DNA test? My mailbox wasn't the right place for the envelope. Thick, cream-colored, pricey stock. I hadn't seen my name, WR, written in calligraphy for more than 10 years. However, I could recognize that handwriting anywhere. My mom's. Her presence permeated the ink like a warning, even if her name wasn't at the bottom of the card. Inside, embossed letters with gold trim. 2 names. K. Moore. Hale, Desmond. I gazed at it for so long that the edges of my hand curled slightly. Calla. My sister was getting married, if you can still call her that. At the Hotel Grand Solace. That was the domain of Seattle royalty. Chandeliers made of crystal. Dinners for $500. There is a waiting list close to the ballroom merely to breathe. And somehow, someone believed that I ought to be present. 12 years. It has been 12 years since my name was spoken in that family without hatred or silence. Now, an invitation to a wedding. Not a word. Don't apologize. Not "we miss you." It was merely a Chile summons in gold foil. Was I wrong? No. The script was too methodical. An olive branch was not what this was. It was a prelude. I sensed it. As I repeatedly flipped the card, my stomach turned, thinking perhaps the back might reveal why they had me there. Then I noticed it. Hale, Desmond. I felt a little shiver when I heard that name. I was acquainted with him. Not very well, but sufficient. Years ago, when I was attempting to raise money for my startup, we had met in a boardroom. He had served as the CFO of a major pharmaceutical company. One of those pretentious, cocky sorts that pretended to listen while glancing through you. He told me that, for someone so young in their path, my projections were astounding. This was code for, "I don't take you seriously, you're too young, and you're too female." He was now getting married to my sister. What were the chances? Except, I don't think odds exist. Intention is something I believe in. People like my family don't just happen to be like that. There was no coincidence here. It was bait. Gold embossed, glittering bait. They also didn't anticipate my biting. However, they overlooked one point. I've changed since they pushed me out the front door with just a broken heart and a duffel bag. The girl is no longer alive. I went to the window after throwing the mail on the counter. Through the rain-stained glass, I could see the skyline of Seattle blinking back at me. From here, I could make clearly the Grand Solace outline. It's funny. I attempted to remove them from my life for years. They wanted me back now, just long enough to speak behind my back and smile for the cameras. My chest constricted. It wasn't fear, though. Something colder. Something targeted. They had no idea who I had become. They were unaware that I had created something out of nothing. Even when no one else would believe in me, my hubby did. That I was no longer merely getting by. I was winning. I grabbed a stylish black dress I had been putting away for a special occasion as soon as I entered my wardrobe. I brushed the fabric with my fingers, strong silhouette, crisp lines. It wasn't a wedding. It was prepared for battle. It buzzed on my phone. Jarth texted. "Are you all right?" After a moment of staring at the screen, I responded back, "I'm attending the wedding." "Hold on. Are you certain?" He answered. I didn't think twice. The time has come. Closure was not the point of this. Not even retaliation was at stake. It has to do with getting my name back. My tail. My fucking spot in the room. They desired a show? They would receive one, but it would not be the type they had anticipated. After zipping the dress and putting on my heels, I turned to face the mirror. Polished. Written. Brutal. I had no intention of begging to sit at their table. I arrived in order to topple the fucking table. I had trouble sleeping that night. My thoughts wouldn't stop talking, even if my body was motionless. I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker below, holding the invitation tightly as if it were a bite, while Jarth was sound asleep. I did what I always do when my mind becomes too noisy the following morning. I took a stroll. Crates clattering, espresso machines hissing, the air heavy with bread, tulips, and fish. Pike Place was just beginning to awaken. It ought to have soothed me. Rather, it brought me back. It's like being 16 again. Putting on a used cardigan. I wished that someone would believe me. My mother's diamond jewelry vanished on that day. Her room wasn't meant for me. I was blamed for Kala leaving the curling iron on once more. To disconnect it, I walked inside. That's all. My father's voice echoed around the home 10 minutes later. With artificial tears in her eyes, Kala remarked, "She was the only one in there." My mom didn't even hesitate. She yelled, "You've always been self-centered. And now this." However, my dad had that expression in his eyes, like if I were something he couldn't get rid of. He whispered, "Disappointment follows you like a shadow." The necklace was never located. I'm not in my room. Nowhere. It didn't matter, though. The damage was already done. I received no punishment. They erased me. Dinner by itself. No transportation. No companions. Nothing but quiet. And Kala, grinning in the corridor as if everything had finally come together for her. I discovered the truth at that point. In my household, appearances were more important than facts. Additionally, they had already chosen their ideal child. My goal was to reset myself in college. It wasn't. It began with murmurs. My roommate then pushed her phone in my face one day. "Have you noticed this?" A blog entry by a student. "The girl who steals, lices, and plays the victim, the true Rowena Clade." Of course, no author. However, the tone? It was like a scar to me. Professors are manipulated by her. Inquire about the necklace that her family never recovered. I felt sick to my stomach. My email stopped working. Partners in the project disappeared. I was pulled aside by a lecturer. "Perception is important," he remarked softly. I felt like screaming. However, I had discovered that truth is irrelevant. Simply what people believe. I lost a research grant because of the post. Nearly caused me to drop out of school. I was unable to identify it as Kala. However, I was aware. She had more in mind than merely winning. She needed me to fail. I believed that I had moved on. All of that was buried. Right up till yesterday night. Right up until that envelope reopened. The injury that never fully recovered. I opened the old blog when I got home. I didn't anticipate it remaining active. Yes, it was. Still accessible online. Toxic even now. This time, no tears. Only fire. I muttered, they never cleaned up the mess. They never imagined that I would return and discover it. I took screenshots of everything. The server data was saved. This was hardly a case of nostalgia. This served as proof. Because she had been waiting, that 16-year-old girl, the one they hushed. Observing. Acquiring teeth. And now? I have the shovel now. The following morning, the irony struck strongly. I didn't even search for it. I'm half awake, drinking coffee, and going through emails. Congratulations to alumna Calor for her innovative research featured in the Leaders in Wellness Spotlight, appeared as a LinkedIn notification. I felt sick to my stomach. I was already preparing for the impact when I clicked on the article. Sustainable Approaches to Nutritional Support in the Community. My title. Word for word. The words. The prototype. I spent months honing that exact conclusion. Each line was raised. Removed from my name. Hers was stamped. She was smiling next to the article. Polished. Bright. As if she had only ever been given green lights in life. I muttered, you must be joking with me. Naturally, though, she wasn't. Kala has always escaped punishment. What about our parents? They simply smiled, nodded, and remarked, honey, she's gifted. Perhaps make notes. They never inquired about the source of her gift. I was struggling to make ends meet when I was in college. Sunrise tutoring. Restocking shelves after midnight. Surviving on campus Wi-Fi and cold ramen. 8 months of labor went into my thesis, which was everything. A nutritional model based on actual community data for underprivileged neighborhoods. One evening, Kala came over. Said that she was only nearby. I was worn out. I'm proud. Starving for approval. I said to her, I think this could really win something. Perhaps even that scholarship for women in health sciences. She grinned. Too supple. Too sweet. Whoa. You completed all of this? I ought to have known. My research folder disappeared from the student drive a week later. It simply vanished. Not a log. Not a trace. I partially completed and submitted an old backup. It exploded. Who do you think won the scholarship? At the spring gala, they declared Calor. Not even my name appeared on the list. She gave a wave. The first row applauded, including my parents. It was whispered by someone behind me, she's just on another level. I grinned as if I weren't splitting in two. I kept it to myself. I mean, who would trust me? The weary, irate sister. Biostats was barely passed by the girl. When I brought it up, Mom remarked, she earned it. Dad went on to say, she works harder than you think. She could teach you something. Yes, I did. I printed the LinkedIn post 10 years later and placed it in a manila folder that was already stuffed full of receipts. Screenshots of her blog entries, which are anonymous. Untrustworthy transcripts. Financial records are dubious. Her phony smile seems to be impervious to bullets. This was not an act of retaliation. It has to do with evidence. Evidence that I hadn't dreamed it. That the falsehoods were true. That they remembered me. I was erased. This is where her story ends, I wrote on a sticky note that I placed inside the binder. I didn't remark, though. Didn't send it. Didn't speak. I waited. Because I've discovered that the best defense against someone setting a trap for you is to act as though you were blind to it. Then come anyway. Give them a chance to shine. Allow them to settle in. When the lights go out, I'll be the one with the switch. The crown was worn by her. However, I created the throne. I'm coming to take it back now. An antique picture album startled me more than I had anticipated. It was merely meant to be a preparation step. obtaining background information, collecting evidence. However, something exploded in my chest when I browsed through a hidden Facebook album called More Family Memories. It was shown by the smiles, which were too flawless and white. Every frame has the feel of a catalog page. Forcibly coordinated holiday sweaters. Pastel lies at Easter brunches. The content never changed, but the background did. And she was in the middle all the time. Vivian. My mom didn't grin. She gave a presentation. She had a tight jaw all the time. Her eyes were practiced. She staged a flawless existence even back then, making sure no one noticed the blood under her nails. I could still hear what she said. "We don't air our family's mess in public" was the same stale statement she used like air freshener. Correct. We simply cover it up with crystal goblets and matching napkins. I once believed that she simply didn't care for me. Now, though, I can see it more clearly than before. She didn't despise me. I was under her control. Similar to how a campaign handles a scandal. Pulling the cords had always been her responsibility. With a scalpel, not in fits of wrath. Clear and accurate. Always in charge. The nasty comments might have come from my father. And the stabs in the back, Kala. However, Vivian was entirely responsible for the choreography, the way our family twisted around appearances, quiet and shame. And I had spent too much time dancing to her song. There was one recollection in particular that would not go away. I was 14 years old. We attended a hospital foundation gala. I had spent weeks rehearsing my brief speech. Just a simple thank you from the Moore girls. It has to do with opportunity and community. I tried to recall the phrases as I stood there in a rented garment that was itching at the seams. I faltered. Not at all. I briefly lost my position. Her smile tightened like a glass crack, and I saw it. She took hold of my arm as I left the stage. Hard. Do you realize how embarrassing that was? She growled, her jaws clenched. Her hold caused my fingers to get numb. Her face, however, remained the same. Not for the cameras. She didn't yell when we arrived home. She made a cut. You gave us a reckless appearance. You should not volunteer if you are incapable of performing. I would never have been so embarrassed by Kala. I stopped doing shows for her that night. Still, a part of me hoped she would notice me. Perhaps the cruelest part is when you no longer hope for love but still yearn for acceptance. I opened a document I hadn't looked at in months after closing the photo album. Family Patterns was the file's label. It wasn't proof. Not in a legal sense. However, it was evidence. My evidence. Kala's comments over the years echoed words that Vivian used all the time as a child. The very least is excellence. Real strength is the ability to remain silent under duress. It was more than a coincidence. Kala was not raised by Vivian. She penned her. Because she liked Kala more, she didn't give her preference. Kala performed the job better, obedient, camera-ready, and willing to be shaped, so she preferred her. Me? I made inquiries. I violated the choreography. When it felt false, I didn't smile. She then attempted to cut me out of the picture. Well, not anymore. I updated the folder with more images, videos, and articles. I opened a fresh email window after that. And stopped. The pointer blinked. I muttered, the words stinging on my tongue, "You taught me to be silent. I'll tell you everything I've kept hidden now." I typed slowly. Consciously. About the reputation of the Moore family. I've included my notes. A few carefully chosen records. A synopsis. I then sent it. The one who got it? A reporter by the name of Becca Lane. We had previously collaborated when I assisted her in exposing corruption at a chain of supplements years ago. She had a duty to me. She also had no trouble destroying wealthy families. She didn't have to publish anything for me. Not quite yet. However, I needed her to understand that the story was true. Because if there's one thing I learned from my mother, it's how to remain motionless when everything behind your face is burning. She did, however, forget one thing. I became proficient at using quiet as a weapon. She showed me how to be happy in spite of suffering. But I figured out how to use it, and she forgot. I believed I had discovered all the secrets there were. Then the envelope arrived. No address for return. I couldn't recognize the handwriting. There was only a simple white envelope, purposefully sealed, in my mailbox. There was a DNA report inside, wrapped neatly between two generic pages of copier paper. I didn't process it at first. I glanced over the header. Personal Genetic Examination, Pacific Diagnostics, 2015. I then fixed my gaze on the bottom result. Uncertainty in the maternal match. My heart thumped. I went back and read it. And once more. My name was the one that appeared under subject. Clay Rowena. The sample of mothers, Vivian Moore. The floor underneath me shifted. Before my thoughts could react, my body did. My chest flushed with heat. My skin became clammy and cold. Not a stamp. Not a word. The single word, inconclusive. I took a seat. Hard. It wasn't real. In my bones, I knew it. However, once the harm was done, that didn't matter. I pulled out my old records drawer, which I almost ever opened. The last legal correspondence I had received from the Moore Estates Council was buried amid tax records and expired identification documents. A digital version of the updated will. 6 months after that DNA report, it was dated. I've lost my name. I wasn't just excluded from the will. I was cut off from the family tree. This was not exile. Extermination was what this was. Vivian wished for me to stay. Even the ashes couldn't whisper my name since she wanted to destroy the bridge so completely. I had not allowed myself to think about it for years until that day. The year was 2016. I was 23. More out of desperation than hope, I had called the family lawyer to inquire about my grandfather's bequest. The one he once assured me I would get regardless of your mother's opinion. I never heard back from anyone. A few weeks later, I received a single line in an email from the accountant: "Your name is not on file as a beneficiary." I thought it was a form of discipline. That they were still upset that I had departed without saying farewell. I held me responsible. I've learned the truth. My own mother was so clinical that she had made up a lie. So tidy. Nobody questioned it. Why would they? Paperwork is believed by people. They trust physicians, seals, and signatures. Daughters who have always been classified as difficult are not believed by them. One thing, though, Vivian forgot. Lying leaves traces. I've also learned to obey them. Jarth assisted us in tracking down the clinic. 3 years after the date of that report, Pacific Diagnostics had shut down. Not surprisingly. It was discovered to be a shell corporation that has been reported for financial problems. The license of one of the physicians on the form was cancelled. For fabricating laboratory findings. A payment appeared. $5,000 in a secret P.O. box. Weeks prior to the filing of the report. It was sent by Vivian Moore. With a soft hand on my back, Jarth remarked, "She didn't just want to forget you. She wished for everyone to forget you were ever here." I refrained from crying. I thought I might cry. But even before the paperwork arrived, something had already died inside of me. I had finished my mourning. You didn't cry over this kind of hurt. The kind of treachery you honed into strategy was this one. I took out my laptop, sat down at my desk, and started writing a message that evening. It wasn't a tirade. It wasn't a request. It was a clear, definitive, and unmistakable reckoning. Subject: I am aware. I wrote, I am aware of the test. I am aware of the falsehood. I've finished portraying the daughter you attempted to remove. I stopped. The final line was then added, undo it. I might also do it in public. Not a threat. Don't be theatrical. Just truth, but with a backbone. I sent it. I grinned as well. Because I didn't have to bear the ensuing silence for the first time in years. She made an attempt to remove my name. Now, however, the grand solace glistened like a glass lie. Too ideal. Overly polished. As if shame had never been experienced by anyone inside. Thus, it was the ideal stage. Wearing a backless, unapologetic navy silk dress that fit me perfectly, I strode across the lobby with my head held high. I wasn't here to fit in. I became visible. The doors of the ballroom flew open, and all eyes suddenly fell on me. The murmur of dialogue wavered. A couple of gasps. The flutes of champagne stopped in mid-air. As her flawlessly manicured fingers tightened around her crystal stem, Vivian's hand jerked. Her face remained intact. Her eyes, however, conveyed the message that she wasn't expected. From her position close to the stage, Calla raised her head. Like something frail exposed to the cold for too long, her smile was strained and broken at the corners. Desmond, too. Desmond, God. The moment he spotted me, his jaw tightened as if memory had struck him more forcefully than he had anticipated. I moved ahead slowly. Then another. Allowing the silence to last. With a level voice and my eyes fixed on my mother, I answered, "You didn't expect me to RSVP." I didn't. I just got here. I wasn't looking for pardon. For the reckoning, I was present. Dinner went on. The air remained heavy, though. The sound of silverware clinking was like thunder in the distance. People pretended not to stare while whispering. However, they all did. The toast started. With a glass lifted, Calla's best friend spoke of love, resiliency, and destiny. I gave her space to finish. Allow the courteous applause to subside. Then I got up. I moved up to stand next to the speaker and said, "I'd like to say a few words." Like a shudder, Calla's smile vanished. I raised my glass. "To be honest," I said. I repeated, I said, allowing the silence to linger like a blade, and those who fake it. There was an immediate stillness. The music even ceased. I looked at my sister. I responded pleasantly, "Calla, where did you get your MD exactly?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Only a stutter. The head shook slightly. "I only ask because this transcript you submitted to the Health Advisory Board. It's interesting," I added, taking a small folder out of my clutch. Desmond took it from me. He took it without saying anything. "It states that you received an honors degree from Pacific University. The issue is that their curriculum and the course codes don't match. Additionally, you never turned in a final capstone. Additionally, your GPA is exaggerated." I smiled slightly at her. "By a considerable amount." At last, the tension was broken by Calla's voice. "This is crazy. It's not the right time or place." At that moment, Vivian stood. She tried to gain control with a harsh voice. "Enough already, Roa, if you were even remotely classy." Calm as ice, I turned to face her. "Class? You forged a DNA test to disinherit me. Sit down." Like wildfire, gasps proliferate. I turned to face Calla again. "You lied throughout your entire career. A falsehood in medicine. While you were trusted by genuine people. Have faith in your knowledge." Desmond scanned the document with shaking hands. Slowly, he glanced up at her. "Is this accurate?" Calla remained silent. She was unable to. He moved back, dropping the papers on the table. I stood up for you, he stated in a tight, quiet voice. God, I stood up for you in front of everyone. Calla grabbed him. Des, please, baby. Keep her from ruining this. He angrily remarked, she didn't ruin it. You did. He then turned to go. No one moved with her, despite Calla's attempts to follow. The room did not move. Her crowd disappeared. The weight of her quiet caused her flawless image to crumble. I left before dessert. I left that ballroom without turning around. The night air was clear outside. Chilly against my body. However, I was happy about it. I inhaled it with clarity. In my backpack, my phone buzzed, a voicemail. I didn't have to pay attention. The tone was already familiar to me, tight. Poisonous. Calculated. Vivian hated losing control no matter what. Without opening it, I erased it. The sky was vast and dark above me. I grinned as I looked up. And that was only the start. I didn't shudder. I didn't think twice. I simply hurled the first stone in their house of mirrors. At 6:14 a.m., the message arrived in my inbox. No subject line. I didn't recognize the sender's name. Just a single phrase, I recall you. You have a right to know the truth. My heart raced since Calla's suspension was still making news. I made a click. A censored hospital incident report from 2017 was loaded as an attachment. Patient, 9-year-old boy. Mild asthma is the diagnosis. Result, induced coma as a result of an improper epinephrine dosage. Present, Dr. Callor. Status, no charges were brought, the case was dismissed. No fees. No responsibility. Only a hidden scandal and a fresh start. I was gasping for air as I glanced at the screen. A brief comment that read, they pulled strings, but she wasn't supposed to be near a pediatric floor, was attached to the email. I was unable to speak at the time, but perhaps you can now. My hands were shaking. Then steadied. It was no longer just about me. I quickly moved after saving the files and encrypting them twice. 3 independent Seattle health watchdog websites, the type that thrived on whistleblowers and weren't scared of lawsuits, received an anonymous tip before midday. My name was not signed by me. I didn't have to. However, I didn't stop there either. I clicked on a fresh mail. To Thomas Kellner, MD. Subject, reinstatement of more residency, needs clarification. Would you mind explaining how, following a pediatric incident that had long-term trauma effects, your top resident was reinstated without a proper hearing? I've attached several records that you might have overlooked. I didn't require his response. Institutions' silence always speaks louder than what they say. Calla's profile was removed from the hospital's website by the next morning. Like a spark to dried leaves, social media exploded. Why was Dr. K. Moore taken off the pediatric center list? Unverified allegations of malpractice from 2017 reappear. I watched, coffee in hand, from my laptop, as one might see a building being torn down. Managed. Essential. It's satisfactory. Vivian arrived at my home at 3:42 p.m. She didn't knock. She beat. Calmly, I opened it and moved aside. Only just inside, she growled, "You've gone too far. This week is your sister's wedding." With my arms crossed, I declared, "This is accountability week. Her life is being destroyed by you. A child was placed in a coma by her. You ensured that there were no charges brought." Her eyes widened. "You have no idea how much pressure she was under. No. You have no right to turn this into a pitiful little tale. You shielded her falsehoods. Buried the suffering of a family. Merely to maintain your reputation." She pointed at me, her hand shaking. "It was always your dream to be the martyr. However, this is abhorrent. What is the term for what you did to me?" With a firm voice, I asked. You lied about a DNA test. You gave them the impression that I wasn't a member of my own family. I became invisible because of you. And now you're upset that I showed up at last? She looked at me, breathing heavily, her rage erupting in waves. I saw Gregory in the corridor behind her. Keep quiet. For once, still. Not defending. Not putting on a show. Simply absorbing. His words could never express what his silence did. You believe that this gives you power? Vivian lost his temper. You believe that taking revenge makes you righteous? No, I replied, approaching the door and flung it open. But I'm free when I tell the truth. She remained still. I went on to say, I won't be quiet again. You are free to depart unless you came here to confess something. She stood there for a long time. Then, without saying a word, she left. I shut the door after her. Turned. And let out a breath. I gave the number in the email a call. After 3 rings, the nurse, Teresa, picked up. I wanted to express my gratitude, I said. A pause occurred. Then her voice, firm but gentle. Someone had to say something. I simply didn't think the sister would be involved. They didn't either, I answered. This was not retaliation. This was fairness. The kind they didn't anticipate. And it had just come. Like a silent explosion, the file fell onto my desk. The heavy stock paper was not used for printing. No big red stamps. Simply put. Legal and clean. Audit findings. Assembled by Jareth's company. Arranged neatly using dates and tabs. The facts are awful, no drama. Transferred via wire from Moore Family Clinic. Reimbursements. Acquisition of medical equipment. Donations to charities. Each and every one, under my name. Clade Rowena. IRS files for years in which I had not received any income were found. Returns that I didn't send in. I never saw any refunds. I lived on energy bars and shared a studio apartment with 2 roommates when I was 19, which is when the first transaction occurred. As well as a mold issue. I had no credit card at all. Not to mention an excuse for a medical consulting fee of $42,000. My voice was dry as I whispered, they used me as a shield. While I was in a shared basement eating ramen. Behind me, Jareth stood with his arms folded. At least 4 shell accounts were linked to your identity, he stated. The IRS would have come after you the following year if this hadn't been discovered during a forensic sweep. I was unable to talk. Being exploited and being abandoned are 2 different things. One hurts you. You're devastated by the other. I wasn't simply thrown away. They used the ashes of my life to construct a financial barrier. I did not shed a tear that night. I refrained from screaming. I shifted. Because I had the last brick now. I intended to bring down the entire tower with it. The black tie event was the Moore Foundation Gala. Heavy on the media. Swarming with legacy families and donors. I didn't receive an invitation. I didn't require one. I wore black. Past wine lists and catering trays and the decay of polished corruption, they slipped in by a side entrance. When I entered the stage, Gregory was in the middle of speaking. There was a quiet in the room, like if a fire alarm had gone off. Confused, he blinked. Until it became apparent. Mid-sip, Vivian froze. Calla winced. I grinned. Taking off the microphone. Slowly and calmly, I continued, you might want to know where your money has been going before you donate tonight. There were gasps. I gave the AV technician next to me a USB disk. The ballroom screens flashed before filling with bank logs, emails, and spreadsheets. One file with a label said, Rowena Clade, Advisor. A signature appears underneath it, G. Moore whispers. Some stood. "Is that her real daughter?" said the donor's wife in a whisper. Vivian went white. Gregory grabbed the microphone. "This is an error. These documents, they are obviously manipulated." "Really?" a voice from the audience said. "They're not." Jareth took a step ahead. Crisp suit. Unflinching eyes. Unreadable expression, Jareth stated. "The originals were sent to the State Attorney General and the IRS by our firm." Gregory closed his mouth abruptly. Then, Desmond was there at his side. In a stern voice, he said, "And to the medical board. Because I will no longer tolerate deception." Vivian made an effort to save it. With burning eyes, Calla drew her hand away as she reached for her. She growled, "How could you bring me into this?" The crowd turned against them, row by row. The once ideal Moore family, the elite of Seattle, broke down in front of legacy families, benefactors, and the media. There, beneath the chandeliers they adored. I didn't wince. Remained motionless. Steady as stone, they simply stood there in the midst of their collapse. They had the funds. The situation. The falsehoods. However, I knew the truth. Moreover, it was louder than them all. I did not wait for the consequences. I didn't wait for a round of applause. I left. The air outside was pure but frigid. The sort of crispness that choked all that came before it. It was relief, not nerves, that made my heart race. This was not an act of retaliation. It wasn't rage. Peace prevailed. At last, the truth was freed. I gazed up at the sky, the metropolitan skyline glimmering as if it shared my secret. "And truth is finally enough," I muttered. I had no intention of destroying them. I simply quit keeping them safe. They completed the remaining tasks. After 2 weeks, all was quiet in my world. Not the spooky silence that comes after a blast. Not the dull, shell-shocked silence that bides its time until something else breaks. There was calm here. Through the window of my bedroom, sunlight poured in. I didn't wake up fearing a lawyer's letter, a phone call, or a headline for once. There were no media encamped outside. Not a single call from Vivian. Calla didn't even send a burner text. Just clear, calm air. I padded to the balcony in my bare feet. I have coffee. Around my waist, the robe is loose. Below, the metropolis continued to move. But up here, time seemed to stop for me alone. Does healing feel like this? No roar. A hum. I took a drink of my coffee and let it to sink in. The previous Rowena would have doubted it. Awaiting the second shoe. Looked for evidence of smoke in the skies. Not this time, though. Since there was nothing left to burn. I have yet to remove the voicemail. I have no idea why. Her voice was a little too tight and cracked. Too angry. "You have made us seem foolish. You'll be sorry you did this. I have no idea who you believe yourself to be. However, you will be held accountable for your actions." However, the final line stuck in my memory. Not the words. The noise. She felt a catch in her throat. Like pain, almost. Nearly. There was no apology. Not even close. Control was still in place. Even now. Even in defeat, she continued to spin her story. However, the sting had subsided. Calla never made a call. Not even a text. Not even a phony "Are you content now?" voicemail. I didn't think she would. But Desmond, I was taken aback by him. One message was sent by him. I was unaware. I apologize. Desmond's message was limited to that. I looked at it for a while. Typed back after that. I understand. I think you're real. However, I no longer require anything from you. I meant it, too. Closure is not necessarily a result of letting go. It simply comes with decision sometimes. Gregory's license to practice medicine was suspended. The clinic was placed on hold while a thorough investigation was conducted. Teams of IRS auditors had started going through reports from the previous 12 years. Vivian was dark now. No interviews. No appearances at charitable events. Nothing to say. What about Kala? She silently left the city, word was. Most likely, she wanted to rebuild somewhere where no one knew who she was. I wasn't boasting. I wasn't having a party. I was nothing. I was observing. Because it's simple to celebrate when someone falls. It is easy to feel sorry for them. But sometimes, just being a witness is the most effective thing you can do. And that's sufficient for me. I entered my downtown office that afternoon. My guys, my crew, grinned. Gave me a warm greeting. With deference. Don't be afraid. Don't gossip. Simply put, community. Miriam arrived that night. When I was 17 and homeless, my first real supervisor gave me a broom rather than a lecture. She brought flowers. Actually, sunflowers. With a little break in her voice, she added, "You made it out." I informed her I had to. There was no more air inside. That evening at the dinner table, Jareth took my hand. He remained silent. He didn't have to. He remarked, "Ro, you did what no one else could. You gave them every opportunity. Additionally, you refused to allow them drag you down with them as they continued to prioritize power over love." I gave a nod. Too full to talk. Not with food. Clearly. For years, I had believed that punishment was the only way to achieve justice. However, perhaps it appears to be a release. And perhaps forgiveness isn't a prerequisite for freedom. However, it does arrive. And when it does, it's like being in the sun barefoot, with no one else telling your narrative. They might never apologize. But I don't have to listen to it anymore. I'm free. And perhaps that is the true nature of healing. Not fireworks. Not grand finales. Simply waking up and recognizing that you are no longer battling to be heard, recognized, or loved by individuals who have only ever sought to control you. If my tale resonated with you, if you've ever experienced silence, exclusion, or being made to feel that your value was dependent on the approval of others, this is what I want you to hear. Nobody is owed your quiet. The burden they placed on you doesn't have to remain with you. Those who have never protected you don't need your protection. You're permitted to raise one's voice. To move aside. To reconstruct. Indeed, even to prosper. Without ever hearing "I apologize," because forgiveness has great power. But liberty? It's all about freedom. I would now be delighted to hear from you. Have you ever found that the bravest thing you have ever done was to walk away? Or perhaps you're still waiting. Why are you unable to let go? Please leave a remark below. Tell me from where you're viewing. Please enter one in the comments if this tale resonated with you. That way, I know it touched the appropriate people. If it didn't strike a chord, I'd still like to know why. Tell me from where you're watching. Your voice counts. Your narrative is important. And you're not by yourself. Real if you want more tales like this. Uncooked. And grounded in reality, don't forget to hit the bell button, subscribe to the channel, and forward this to someone who should hear it. Because occasionally, one story is enough to remind us ours is still ours to write. The problem with betrayal is that, while it may shatter you, it need not define you. The best retaliation isn't always noisy or messy, sometimes it's healing, growing, and rising so subtly that people aren't even aware it's happening. If you are harboring anger, let it to drive your development rather than your downfall. Establish limits. Opt for peace. Keep your energy safe. Instead of a struggle, you should have a life that feels liberating. Have the individuals you trusted the most ever deceived you? I'd love to learn how you regained your power, so please share your tale in the comments below.